The first quarter of 2023 has seen monumental advancements in technology, especially in AI. But the question is whether in financial services, the digital transformation roadmaps and projects are adapting to these new advancements. In this video, we will take a close look at this topic through the eyes, insights, and experiences of a tech consultancy and software provider. With this in mind, I reached out to one of the emerging top tech cities in Europe, Sofia in Bulgaria. Before we dive into the topic, I want to brief you about Bulgaria because it is in many ways a rising star. Two items that have impressed me. One is around the gender equality within the Bulgarian workforce. Overall, it is much higher than the global average. In Bulgaria, over 45% of the workforce are women, while the global average is around 39%, but especially in the ICT sector, it is very high at 29%, which is about 10 points higher than the average in Europe, which is only 19%. Bulgaria, as a fintech hub, has about 80 fintechs headquartered in Bulgaria, and mainly they are in the payments and billing subsector. Then some come from lending and capital markets, that's the second subgroup. My guest today is Bozhidar Goranchev, an engineering manager from Accedia. Accedia is one of the top IT firms headquartered in Bulgaria, but serving over 20 countries, 5 continents globally. It's a company that is 10 years old and has been recognized as a fast-growing tech company, both by Deloitte lists and FT lists. Bozhidar is very passionate about advanced technologies and how these technologies can transform operational processes. Welcome, Bozhidar. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's dive into this very exciting topic as things are changing in the market and I guess everywhere. We're all feeling that we live in exciting times, but let's take a look at what you are seeing and hearing in the market. Let's start with what have you seen post the pandemic era in terms of the appetite or the urgency for digital transformation in financial services?
Okay, I mean, I guess it might be useful to just take a step back here and then maybe just go through as some context what happened immediately after the pandemic, during the pandemic, and now in the present terms. So I'd say we see three more or less distinct phases here. So at first, immediately when the pandemic began, as in most industries, we saw a sharp decline in demand. So nobody knew what to expect really, how long the pandemic would be, how severe it would be, how far and how quickly it would spread, and how long it would last. And so we saw deals that were practically on the verge of being signed, getting delayed or getting canceled altogether. And if I was actually working on one of these, we had done all of the discovery work and we were actually about to sign on the 13th of March. And that was the day when the pandemic began, and it got delayed, but quite severely. We did sign it in the end, but months after. And that's, I think, actually the second period where companies started realizing that, all right, this is probably not going away in a week or two. We actually need to start adjusting to the new reality. We need to readjust their ways of working. And this actually led to unprecedented demand in digital transformation, including from that one firm, which we actually ended up signing. And so we got a lot of work coming our way. We actually, in terms of resource size, we expanded almost by 100% in these 2 years after. But then, as you say, what are we seeing now? So we're seeing, yes, we are seeing a bit of leveling off of demand, but obviously we're also seeing, as with the pandemic, again, probably a lifetime event, once in a lifetime event, which is the war in Ukraine and the resulting inflation. And here I'd say we're probably observing two different things. One, that are causes for this leveling off in demand. One is, I'd probably say that some of the digital transformations that started with the pandemic about 2 years ago are actually getting near completion now. And so work in that regard is a bit less now. But also, and obviously companies are getting a lot more cost sensitive now. But also I'd say this has driven them to seek smarter and more sophisticated initiatives, such as, for instance, artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Interesting. And do you see that there are different sort of trends in different geographies as you're operating in different geographies, or different markets in the sense of, consumer banking versus capital markets and the different areas, or crypto and so on? What are you seeing there?
So I guess traditionally we've seen the highest levels of sustained interest from the markets you'd probably expect. So Europe and the United States are by far the markets where we have the strongest presence, and industries, again, they're pretty much aligned with expectations. So in the UK you have the fintechs, Germany has a lot of manufacturing clients, or we do have a lot of manufacturing clients in Germany. But we are also definitely seeing demand from other geographies as well now. And not to say that there hasn't been such demand in the past. So for instance, our oldest client is in fact from South Africa, and we have a number of ongoing initiatives with them. But again, I'd say the trend is that a lot of these, including with that client, are moving towards a more digital technological estate and to a more significant focus on AI, on cybersecurity. And so we're also seeing markets such as Asia being on the rise. Japan specifically, though you could argue that Japan has always been quite technologically astute. But I'd say the biggest difference is in industries which you wouldn't usually expect this, we're now seeing demand from them. And so also because everything is now remote, and so there's more both inclination and also comfort in working fully remotely with vendors such as ours. And so when everybody is remote, then there are less boundaries and less discomfort with staff augmentation, with fully remote teams, with fully outsourced areas of the business as well. So it's definitely easier to work. And definitely there are more industries now looking for digitalization and outsourcing than there were before.
Interesting cultural shift in terms of, vendor onboarding or business collaborations, outsourcing or not. That is quite remarkable. You mentioned AI. In terms of deploying machine learning and AI, is there inbound interest, inbound requests that you would say there's an uptick or an uptrend, or not really?
Definitely an uptick, and I guess the AI is now the trendy technology. Definitely an uptick in more or less three, I'd say, or at least what we are seeing and servicing at the moment, three different types of AI. So data science, I say, obviously is by far the most popular one, but we also have natural language processing projects and also computer vision, predictive analytics. With data science, again, the biggest one by far. You see more traditional one, especially in the financial industry. The classic example, determining creditworthiness. So we have several projects in this area. So using different machine learning models, predicting customer creditworthiness, future payments, and basically helping automate a lot of the rules that in the past a human would go through. And some of our clients are processing up to like 30,000 applications per day with the use of machine learning algorithms, significantly reducing churn rates as well. Also raised fraud monitoring, etc., etc. Predictive analytics as well. Again, in the more traditional example, marketing. So analyzing responsiveness to promotional campaigns a lot more accurately and quickly than a human would. We had projects outside of fintech as well. So we were helping with actually distributing petrol deliveries to gas stations based on demand, so basically not just reacting, but being ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
This is data science, a lot of interesting projects in natural language processing as well. So we've helped a firm essentially go, because they don't have as much direct interaction with customers. Essentially, we've used language processing models to churn different social media platforms and try to gauge sentiment towards that client, so whether it's positive, negative, neutral, and then essentially assigning a rating and helping them be more proactive with their customer engagement as well. We've actually done a quite interesting project on a similar fashion in terms of trying to detect propaganda, which was quite interesting. So again, these projects are now starting to get a lot more interesting and sort of venturing beyond the traditional data analysis examples that we've seen before.
So would you say, with regards to ChatGPT and these large language models that are all the rave right now, like the GPT transformer models, would you say that those are of interest? Are you hearing from your clients, from your prospects, inbound inquiry around those, or do they remain sort of the discussion at the pub or you know, after work?
Yeah.
And so on? And how do you distinguish that from the natural language processing models that you already mentioned?
So ChatGPT is an interesting one. It's definitely, again, as you say, a topic of discussion at the moment. It's quite trendy. There's a lot of hype around it. I think we're definitely seeing both informal and formal usage and trends around it. So informal usage, I'd say a lot of, from my observations, a lot of our engineers, a lot of engineers generally, a lot of non-engineering departments, marketing, sales, they do start to use ChatGPT now on a everyday level to just helping with in the IT sphere, for instance, helping with finding errors in the code, finding more efficient infrastructure setups, with marketing, helping with drafting marketing campaigns, etc., etc. We are also, though, definitely seeing a lot of formal queries rather from several clients. In fact, I was chatting to a couple of clients last week about it, asking about Copilot, which is basically an integration of a version of ChatGPT into the Microsoft estate, because obviously Microsoft are a huge stakeholder in OpenAI, and there's definitely interest with clients.
I was just, by the way, Bozhidar, I just spoke last week with a senior director at Microsoft Teams, exactly on this topic of Copilot that they're rolling out within their ecosystems, and will soon be integrated with Excel, for example, which is obviously a huge low-code application from decades ago that will get what I would call a huge upgrade or a longer life, if you want, with these co-pilots. And I'm sure this is of interest in financial services and in other services too. So Copilot is a major on the radar of everybody to see how it can change processes and operations. The question is, it seems to me that you are seeing some inquiry, not yet concrete projects, but what is your sentiment there?
So I think there's a certain level of hype here, but beyond that, I think people are slightly misunderstanding what ChatGPT, Copilot, etc., what they're supposed to be used for, or at least we haven't reached that point yet. But it's not that it's going to necessarily replace engineers or replace marketers or salesmen. It's there to aid them. Like in the Excel example you mentioned, a lot of people they can't use the full set of Excel capabilities because they don't know how, and that's fine. But being able to, in natural language, explain to Excel via Copilot what you actually want to do is going to make things significantly easier. But you still need to be able to give it an accurate and thoughtful prompt. And so we're actually joking that AI engineers will now be called AI prompt engineers. But it is definitely going to increase productivity by a lot. Is it going to replace people? Maybe not yet. And so I think it's more like it's not going to create new projects, maybe, but I see it as significantly increasing the productivity within these projects and efficiency within them.
So experimentation, whether it's in labs, in sandboxes, in innovation spaces within companies, will accelerate and will cost
less,
much less and cost is not only money, it's also time, human resources, and so on.
Exactly. But there's also, I think, a slight hesitation there to actually fully embrace it. So there's a lot of hype, but people are still quite hesitant. So for instance, they're quite not afraid, probably not the word, but anxious about cybersecurity as well. And so again, Copilot can integrate with the via obviously being a Microsoft product, it can integrate with Microsoft's cloud, etc. And I think businesses are still hesitant about that. But I think what they're probably not realizing is that, yes, they're giving Copilot, not directly ChatGPT, but they're giving it access to their data. But by doing so, they're kind of they are getting the same level of security that's inherent to Microsoft Azure, for example, which is in most cases, and actually I'd probably say in all cases, much better than their own security levels. So there is that fear in that space, but I think companies will start embracing it quite soon as well, and being more comfortable with that as a technology.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely questions there that need to be clarified, and once they're resolved, then it will be a sudden adoption. I mean, was it? Yeah, has the relationship between tech vendors, tech consultants like Accedia changed over time and recently, I would say over the past 2 or 3 years with financial services companies, especially with the incumbents, the big, established providers? What are your thoughts there?
I definitely think so. It's definitely changed. As mentioned, companies are much more comfortable now working remotely and working with vendors, and they're doing so much more frequently. And so, especially for like the incumbents, which were a bit more conservative in that regard, and even if they were working with consultancies, you would have like 20, not 24, but 5 days a week physical presence in their offices, etc. Now, obviously, this for a while was not possible, and now it's not necessary anymore. I think these companies are a lot more comfortable now working with vendors, and so what we're seeing is the relationship evolving from a simple client-vendor delivery relationship to partnerships and to long-term partnerships usually. And so we are seeing a lot more responsibility delegated our way because of higher trust. And so, as a simple example, for instance, in many of our projects, we are seeing product owners on our side, which is not something which would have been frequent a couple of years ago, because this is a traditionally been a role that's been on the client side. But now we're seeing this in a lot of our projects, and actually the demand for business analysts on our end has increased pretty much tenfold, and so has our team of BAs. And I think this is quite quite telling that companies are a lot more comfortable now delegating responsibility, and as a result, they're getting higher value.
Even in financial services, which is obviously very highly regulated sector, you're seeing that. Which subsectors would you say have moved already in that direction? Is it in payments? Is it in lending? What sub areas have you in your experience?
I think across them, but again, the incumbents, which the traditional retail banking and investment banking firms are again a lot more comfortable with having such a partnership relationship, and so a lot more comfortable with placing vendor resources in advisory roles, not just execution roles and delivery roles. And I think the walls are definitely starting to go down there. Payments, I think, has traditionally been it's been an area which has been a bit more open to innovation because of all of the startups and fintechs in that space. But I think some of the traditional banks are trying to move into the future now, and this changed way of working is one of the avenues they're trying to do that through.
How has open banking, of course, it's not the same in different geographies in terms of adoption, but it is a global trend. How has that changed the vendor, the technology position, and the relationship with your clients?
Open banking is an interesting one as well. Well, obviously, with open banking, you kind of have, by necessity, relationship not just directly with your client, but with other institutions as well. And so, again, it requires quite a significant level of trust, also from the end customer. And maybe such levels of trust were not necessarily high before the pandemic, but since then everything is now fully digital or going towards fully digital. Customers are a lot more comfortable with that, and so they're a lot more willing to see. Obviously, they saw the benefit before, but now they're a lot more willing to make some of the trade-offs or the perceived trade-offs that they're seeing in terms of sharing data, etc. I think this is now getting a lot more normalized. And it's showing in other areas as well, but open banking is definitely one.
Interesting. Bozhidar, before we close our interesting discussion, I wanted to ask about your company, about Accedia as a vendor, as an IT company. How have you changed internally in terms of the business culture? Because we spoke about the changes in the market, your clients, the changes in the relationship. What about your business culture internally?
So I guess our culture has then shifted to respond to these trends we're seeing. So there's demand for more sophisticated technology now, and the more closer relationship with customers, which has always been what we've been striving to do, and delivering value to our clients beyond just simple project delivery, but more in advisory roles. And so we've been trying to develop capability on our end internally to be able to do that. And specifically, AI and cybersecurity, I think, are two areas where we're definitely trying to focus on and deliver values to clients through. And to support that, I guess we've changed our clients, our culture to accommodate that. So, for instance, one thing we're doing for a couple of years now, actually, is we have sort of an internal innovation center where teams come together and they develop a mini product that they can then present to the firm, and they compete with each other, and so the firm can then endorse certain products of these and support them. And the focus is on using technologies which are cutting edge, which are not perhaps used in everyday projects, but which we can then develop further and then use in actual products as well. And we've also hosted several hackathon events on our end. So it's, I guess, trying to go for that agility and nimbleness in our culture, and being able to focus on what we see as the next big things in technology, which at the moment, AI and cybersecurity, but other areas as well.
I mean, AI and cybersecurity are clearly huge areas, and that keep evolving. So
Absolutely.
You can never stop, as you said, researching and trying to be ahead of the game, and offering solutions, architectures to solve the challenges and the opportunities that will be coming up. Bozhidar, thank you so much for sharing these insights that are behind the scenes. We don't see all the work that is going on. We as end customers are always, on the customer front, but there's the technology that works behind to change our experiences. Thank you for sharing your insights.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.